What's up, everyone? Good morning, and welcome to Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast. I am Kyle Nabors, along with Sean Hammond. And man, Sean, let's just do it. Let's just dive right in. What the hell did we watch last night?
Oh man, I think that's the only way to talk about this game is just to dive right in, hold your nose and get through it. Because I think that's what a lot of Bears fans were doing last night. And I know everyone loves to make fun of the Thursday night matchups. You're going to get some of those when every team is playing on Thursday night at some point during the season. But yeah, man, that was brutal, especially in that first half.
I mean, I picked the game to be a 16-13 finish, so I wasn't exactly expecting this to be a pretty matchup. But when we got to halftime last night, I was like, I don't know how much longer we can do this.
It's a miracle that either team had points at halftime. I mean, the Commanders needed back to back defensive pass interference calls against the Bears. One of which was really questionable. You could argue both were
I think
questionable.
both were questionable. The second one in particular was
Yeah,
pretty.
the one against Jalen Johnson was just awful. I thought that was a terrible call, and Jalen thought that was a terrible call. He used a not so nice word about it, and then said that the ref was ducking him, didn't want to talk to him afterwards. So yeah, I mean that set up the field goal, and you're going into halftime. It's 3-0, and you're like, what? I mean, it felt like the first touchdown was going to win the game, and that's not obviously how it turned out. Justin Fields came back and had that bomb of a throw, and that was really the highlight of the day for the Bears offense. And they just made too many mistakes when it came down to it.
Rick popping in here. I still can't believe we lost. Yeah, I mean, you look at the way, like that final drive. I guess that's they get down into the red zone there. Justin Fields makes that incredible run, escaping down the sideline and getting inside what I believe to the 5-yard line. And you just knew with the way that game had developed that it wasn't going to be simple trying to get into the end zone, and it certainly wasn't.
No, that's kind of becoming a theme with this Bears team is they get down to the red zone and it's never easy to get into the end zone when you're down there. And I actually thought that Luke Getsy did an all right job with his play calls down there. You had Ryan Griffin on that one play in the second quarter. Obviously, you want to punch the fourth and one on the goal line. You got to punch that in, but that just comes down to getting the push on the offensive line, and the Bears weren't able to do that or to do it effectively. And then, I like the call to Mooney at the end of the game too. I mean, you made the play. The bobble is what really cost you. If he catches that ball cleanly, it's a touchdown and you win.
Yeah, it's a tough play for Darnell Mooney to make. I think most people, including myself, would say he needs to make that play. You're the number one wide receiver on this team. To his credit, he said that he should have made that play last night. That he lost it in the bank of lights for a second, I believe, was part of the explanation. But even then, he said he needed to make that play. But I'm going to throw this up here from Mark because this is already kind of how it's developing. Mark says, wow, Hub was right. The offense looks terrible, but I don't think the problem is Justin Fields. The offensive line is terrible. He has no time to throw, and the only receiver that he trusts is Mooney. And so this is what we talked about all offseason. And Hub,
that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, so this is what we talked about. And what was my concern with the way the Bears were approaching, Ryan Poles was approaching this season, was I felt like you needed – I understand, like, this team, no matter what you added in free agency in the draft, they weren't going to be ready to contend this year. So you kind of get stuck in a tough place, right? You don't want to be stuck in no man's land. But you also needed to have sufficient talent around Justin Fields to feel confident knowing, okay, is it him or is it, a coaching issue? Is it a lack of talent around him? And because of the deficiencies they left around him, now it's going to be tougher to tell. And you're going to see this particularly in the public sphere when it comes to the media and fans. Like, this is going to become a talking point. And I'm guessing by about mid-November, everyone's going to be tired of talking about whether Justin Fields is any good or not, Sean.
Well, yeah, I mean, in a sense, Ryan Poles has made it harder on himself to tell whether Justin is the long-term answer or not. Now, we don't know what's said behind closed doors. Maybe he's already made up his mind that he's going to give Justin 2 years, but this is the NFL, and it doesn't always work that way. You don't always get multiple opportunities if you're a quarterback, if you're a head coach, whatever it is. So yeah, I mean the talent around Justin is clearly a detriment, and it's not giving you the best opportunity to see what he can do. Now I know that he made some mistakes. You know, that throw to Ryan Griffin was the most obvious one. That was a touchdown right there, and he took ownership of that and said I missed it. But every quarterback is going to miss some throws here and there. The problem is he doesn't seem to trust anybody except Mooney. You see him hesitating a little bit on opportunities where guys are maybe just a little bit open, and if he trusted the receiver in that situation, maybe he would pull the trigger. But really, he's only doing that with Mooney, and it's been a theme all off season, and we're seeing it come to fruition where there's just not enough help. And as Mark pointed out in his comment or question, the offensive line has not been good, and they got to figure some things out. I don't think that there's not going to be any significant reinforcements coming in unless they make a move. But you could shuffle things up, but I don't know that that's really going to solve your problems there.
Yeah. Coming into last night's game, the interior of the offensive line had I shouldn't say it's certainly been an issue for the Bears. And then Braxton Jones had his worst game last night. Justin Fields is running for his life, getting hit over and over. Rick popping in here saying it's a wide receiver issue. I believe, and yeah, I mean, it's certainly Sean is not incorrect when he's talking about Justin Fields doesn't appear to really trust anyone outside of Darnell Mooney. But then you have the third factor, which is the fact that Justin Fields is still developing, and there are signs that are concerned. Not just, I mean, the Ryan Griffin throw, it is what it is. He missed that throw most days. Justin Fields isn't going to miss that throw. I mean, there are probably very few times in his adult life where he's missed that type of a throw. The bigger issues, though, are what we're saying. Like, there are times Justin Fields, while he's making really good plays with his feet, he's also running into sacks sometimes. There's times where he is not reading the field correctly. I mean, Kirk Herbstreit, who I really do enjoy as a color analyst, did a good job pointing out. There was a time last night where there was a crossing route. A guy came out of his break that was an easy first down. Justin Fields hesitated, and by that point, it was covered up. The Bears end up, the drive dies, and the Bears punt the ball away. Like, Justin Fields needs to make that throw, and Kirk Herbstreit correctly, or the most common terminology talking about NFL open. I mean, that guy was NFL open. That doesn't mean it's not going to come for Justin Fields. We've seen this very thing for Tua for the first couple of years of his career, and it does seem to be getting better with him. Unfortunately, the injury, the concussion now are kind of derailing what was a lot of progress for him. But I mean, this is a multifaceted issue for Justin Fields, and the Bears just didn't, like I said, the Bears didn't do themselves any favor by putting him in this position not to have enough talent around him.
And there's no easy solutions, at least in terms of looking at the 2022 season. I know that, the trade, you can still make a trade for a few more weeks. But everything we've seen from Ryan Poles suggests that that's not what they're going to do. They've been very conservative in their moves and free agency and over the offseason. And I don't know how much, they really want to invest in this 2-4 football team right now. And it's funny, you mentioned what Kirk Herbstreit was saying last night with these receivers. You need to know what NFL open is, but part of the problem is you need to have NFL receivers to be able to do that. And I don't know that they really have a whole lot of those. I don't know how Justin could trust his receivers when you have, Dante Pettis dropping a real bad ball on third down last week. Amir Smith-Marset fumbling.
Oh God, Amir Smith-Marset. I feel bad for that poor kid because it's just been a rough couple of weeks. You have the bad fumble last week. You had a couple of plays late in that game last night. You have the end around where he runs into the back of his tight end or the back of his blocker, and then there was another play. I'm blanking out on it where he had a chance to make a play, and it was kind of hilarious in how south it went, how quickly it went south, I should say. But yeah, I didn't tweet it last night, but I almost didn't. I didn't really want to get into a debate on Twitter at that point, though, because my thought though was if the Bears just had replacement level talent at offense, and you hear replacement level a lot more when you're talking about baseball, but it's just talking league average talent, what would this offense look like, and what would Justin Fields look like? And that's really hard to figure out right now.
Yeah, it's super hard. I certainly don't think the receiving core is league average. I think they're well below that. Obviously, Darnell Mooney is going to bring that average up a little bit, but there's not a whole lot else to like in that situation. And the offensive line. I know people have been upset about Sam Mustipher at center, but I don't necessarily think Lucas Patrick has played all that much better. Certainly not last night. I mean, he struggled at times, and he's had his bad moments. So if you're upset about Mustipher at center, I mean, your next best option is Lucas Patrick.
Yeah, that's what Mark had said. Do you think Leatherwood would be any better? He can't be worse than Mustipher. And I agree. Like Sam Mustipher, particularly over the last 2 weeks now, has been an issue. He was again last night, but it's not just him. And the interior of the offensive line, all three of those positions have been mediocre at best and downright bad at times. I mean, there was a play last night, and I did see people immediately kind of blame it on Sam Mustipher, but like it was essentially a rip move to the inside shoulder of Lucas Patrick, and he just got he completely whiffed on it, and Mustipher tried to get over and help him and wasn't able to get there in time. But Lucas Patrick, for as much as the Bears talked him up, as Ryan Poles talked him up, it's been a tremendous disappointment for him.
I mean, yeah, I don't. They brought him in here and they basically anointed him the starting center, a position where he hasn't yet to play this season. And I know that's more injury related than anything, but I don't know that Bears fans should have had their expectations that high. At the end of the day, this is a guy you're paying $8 million on a 2-year deal, and
well, I mean, the thing is, they sold him as they sold.
Well,
him as
yeah, they did
this
absolutely
tough competitor that could you don't bring back James Daniels, who did have his flaws but had become a pretty solid option on the interior of the offensive line. You knew that you had issues with young players at your tackle positions. You had a chance to really solidify the interior of the offensive line. You went this route though, and now you're seeing you're reaping the what you sowed.
And it's largely his presence in the locker room that is a big selling point that they were talking about all off season. But
yeah,
that doesn't help you. If he's not playing up to standard, that only goes so far.
And I think you are starting to see. I at least I've had texts from several friends since last night where they're starting to point fingers a little bit more at Ryan Poles for the lack of talent around Justin Fields, and it's not surprising. That I was saying earlier, it's the Bears have set themselves up to put themselves in this position, and it's kind of aggravating, honestly, because it was very obvious coming into this where this was heading.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, Kyle. Like the average Bears fan sitting on their couch is seeing this and noticing it. It's not like you have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. Justin doesn't have a whole lot of help. And that's going to be the story of this season. That already is the story of this season. And I don't know, that makes it really hard on Ryan Poles to when you're looking at the big picture to decide what to do with Justin Fields and what he needs to succeed next year.
Yeah, we had a question earlier. Rick talking about trading for a wide receiver. Will the Bears be active for a wide receiver at the trade deadline? A couple things there. There's been a name I see Mark now mentioning in DJ Moore. DJ Moore's name has been floating around quite a bit over the last couple of weeks, and Mark also talked about Denzel Mims. I really don't see the Bears making a trade and giving up draft capital for a wide receiver at this point, Sean.
No, Ryan Poles wants to build this thing through the draft. We saw that with the trade downs in the spring, where he turned I don't remember what it was, 5 picks into 10 or something like that. That's going to be the blueprint moving forward, and I don't think that he necessarily wants to invest future draft picks to make this team better right now. Because yes, it's bad. You're sitting at 2-4, though. I mean, what are you really going to accomplish if you bring another receiver in here? I don't think the playoffs are really a realistic expectation at this point. I know that you can get in, that you can sneak in there with a 9-8 record, but that's going to be really tough to do when you're behind the ball at 2-4. DJ Moore has a pretty darn big contract too. So that's
what I was going to say. DJ Moore is signed through 2025, which is nice, but And he's only 25 years old. It's
That's
just
trading for a guy like him would be the exact opposite of what we saw all off season in trading Khalil Mack and shedding salary.
yeah, and so you're probably going to have to give up. I'm trying to think. For DJ Moore, you're probably looking at like a third or a fourth rounder for someone like that. You don't want to do that, I don't believe, or I don't believe the Bears would want to do that. Now, Mark bringing up a name like Denzel Mims, a guy that's kind of fallen out of favor, a former first round pick, a guy that you could probably get really cheap at the trade deadline if he's even available. I'm not sure what the Jets are looking at with him. But like he's the type of guy where maybe you get for a seventh rounder, and maybe it becomes it's conditional based on performance for Denzel Mims. I could see Mark now chiming back in here with you could get Min for a fourth round. I don't think it'd take a fourth round to get Denzel Mims at this point. But like I said, I think you're looking at probably like a seventh rounder that has a chance to become a sixth rounder or even a fifth rounder, depending on his production. I see a potential like that, Sean, a former first round pick, kind of like we've seen with N'Keal Harry, taking a chance like that instead of someone like DJ Moore.
Well, yeah, and that's a good comparison, bringing up the N'Keal Harry trade, and it was kind of a bummer that he didn't play last night, but I expect we'll see him next week against the Patriots. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about a buy low type of receiver, somebody that you're not going to give up a lot and hope that they outperform what they did at their previous spot. Bears got a lot of guys like that right now, and it's not really working out for them so much right now in terms of the 2022 season. Now, long term, maybe N'Keal Harry can get back out there and make a difference. But that's kind of exactly what I mean. Like, you're not going to make this big move to get yourself a star stud wide receiver when you're a 2-4 football team and you're trending, in the wrong direction. And if you're Ryan Poles, you're looking at this from a 10,000 foot lens. You don't care about this season realistically.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very clear. He doesn't care about this season all that much in terms of wins and losses, at least. But we bring up Harry, we bring up our Alex Leatherwood a little bit ago. Both positions at wide receiver and offensive line where the Bears clearly need some help. I'm sure that's how the Bears are going to sell it too. Over the next week or so, we talk about reinforcement. They're going to say, well, we got N'Keal Harry coming back. We have Alex Leatherwood, who's now returning to practice and should be there. And that is, they can say that's two former first round picks. We talk about Denzel Mims, a former first round pick, where you could potentially go out and make a trade for him. They're going to say, though, that, we have two high upside former first round picks that we want to get a look at here over the next month or so, Sean.
And that's the thing. Yeah, you have one of those guys in N'Keal Harry, and you haven't had a chance to look at him yet. So I don't even know that they would necessarily make a move like that because you're just looking for the next N'Keal Harry, the guy you can get cheap for a 7th round pick. And you got one on your roster right now. You just got to get him healthy.
The Bears Insider podcast is sponsored by Marengo Guns. Always buying, always paying top dollar for your guns, ammo, and military items. Come see the experts at Marengo Guns. Open 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. And of course, you can follow myself on Twitter at Kyle Nabors. You can follow Sean on Twitter at Sean Hammond. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you are, if you are on YouTube, though, hit the thumbs up button, please, and subscribe. It really helps us grow the channel. It helps other people find our content. And of course, find all of our content at shawlocal.com. Sean's got some great content up from the game last night. We'll have follow-up coverage today from Hallis Haw. Rick had said, please tell me Velus will never return a punt again, Sean.
I mean, hey, anything's on the table right now. I think Matt Eberflus is a little bit fed up with that. As he's a guy who never really gets heated, but he's not happy with that. He made that clear last night. I think Velas's job as a punt returner certainly could be in question now after this has happened twice in the span of 3 weeks. Key fourth quarter punts that he just did not secure, and it really cost them both games. I mean, it led to the game-winning touchdown last night. They got the ball down, inside the 10, and against the Giants a couple of weeks ago, it cost them any chance at a comeback.
It's tough to see that happen to a rookie that has, the Bears drafted him because of his high upside and playmaking potential, and that includes the return game. And it's been, unfortunately, for Velus and the Bears, it hasn't gone well through these first several weeks. And one thing I'll say about Velus, I was a little surprised. And I know it was coming off a short week. I expected to see him to have a bit more of a role on offense last night. I expected some more snaps. I didn't expect that number to jump to 60-70% of snaps or anything like that. But given the struggles that the Bears have had at wide receiver, I did think we'd see him used a little bit more.
Yeah, I did too. And I was expecting to see him in there a little bit more as well. And I don't think back up to speed. I don't know if they just have some guys established ahead of him from all that time that he missed already.
Well,
But I think
if
he got
if
nothing to lose.
I don't
Yeah,
know how
right.
how much can Equanimous St. Brown and Dante Pettis establish themselves? Like if you spent
Yeah,
a draft pick on Velus Jones, at some point you need to get Velus Jones integrated into your offense.
absolutely. I mean, you mentioned Equanimous St. Brown. Where the heck has he been?
Yeah,
Like he made a couple nice catches week 1, week 2, and since then has kind of just faded off and disappeared really. And um, I think you could argue both ways. If you want, Velus Jones was a great return man in the SEC last year, and if you really think that he can be that in the NFL, you got to keep giving him chances. But at the same time, it can't cost you games. And I think Dante Pettis might not be a better return man, but he has shown for the most part that he's going to secure the football, and that's the pretty important part of that job.
yeah, definitely. It's it's one of those things where, again, I mean, the Bears just don't seem to have very good in-house options right now, Sean.
No, they don't. And they're gonna look. You got to improve on all phases at this point. I do think the defense actually played pretty well. I mean, the that situation after Velas's fumble was, they had their backs against the wall, and you're going to give up a touchdown a lot of the times there. But I thought the rest of the game they played pretty well, and obviously Carson Wentz is no Tom Brady, no Patrick Mahomes, but that was the best phase. Other than that, you still have to get better on offense, on special teams, and certainly you want some to throw a couple more playmakers in there in that defense. Although there was some promising things to take from that last night.
Yeah, I mean the pass rush still needs to get better on defense, but
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean Jalen Johnson returning really helped the defense. You could tell last night the difference he made out there on the field. But you saw the Bears employ a little bit more blitzing last night. You saw that early. Jaquan Brisker had a sack, I believe, on the opening drive of the game, or really early in that
It was, I
contest.
think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's nice to see him get involved
They
in
brought
blitz.
7 or 8 guys on that play.
Yeah, that was good to see. Let's see what else in the secondary or on the defense stood out. Yeah, Eddie Jackson had another good game. He should have had another turnover. The I believe it was Terry McLaurin had the ball pop out and then come right back to him. That was incredibly
Yeah,
lucky.
that was.
So I mean, overall, the defense played pretty well. Again,
I agree with what you said, that you really felt Jalen Johnson's return. You felt his presence, and especially that pass breakup right before halftime to prevent a touchdown on that deep throw to McLaurin. That was, I mean, you don't really have a whole lot of guys who make a play like that, and the Bears were missing that certainly against the Vikings, but really the last 3 weeks.
Mark saying, what could you get by trading Roquan? And before we answer that question, I want to let's talk about Roquan again last night, because he had the really big game a couple weeks back. I believe it was a couple weeks back now. Things start to run together after a
Yeah.
while. But again, last night, like not making enough impact plays for a guy that wants roughly $100 million.
No, he's not. That's just the fact of it. I know he's got a million tackles. He leads the Bears in tackles pretty much every week, but he had a sack last night, sure. But those big impact type plays just aren't
They're
there.
too
At least
few and far between.
not for a guy who you're going to pay that much money. He's got a 1.5 sacks on the season, 1 interception through 6 games. I don't know that the Bears are going to be trying to trade him, because you don't really need to. You have the franchise tag available to you. But I certainly don't think that Roquan has really helped his argument for that type of money.
Well, he hasn't helped his argument, or he hasn't done anything that's going to cause someone to come out and give up a first round pick for him either, which is what, people want to trade Roquan Smith, but and we do know that he that he had requested the trade back during camp. The Bears refused to do it, but given the way that the Bears have operated, if someone had come to the Bears and said, "We'll give you a first and a third or overpay for Roquan Smith," I'm pretty sure Ryan Poles would have pulled that trigger. They didn't, and I don't think Roquan has done anything that really would elevate his stock to where a team is now going to overpay for him to get 8 games out of him this year, and then either have to pay him or franchise tag him. So I don't think Mark that I don't think you're going to see Roquan Smith move before the trade deadline. I think someone like Robert Quinn could be a veteran, but I do not think Roquan Smith is going to command enough in the trade market right now to make it worth trading him.
Unless some team that is very much in contention, unless the Bills, unless the Chiefs lose a key linebacker, I don't know that you're going to get the type of offer that you're going to want for Roquan Smith. And you're right about Robert Quinn. I know his numbers aren't good, but there's a lot of teams out there that need a pass rusher. You look at the Rams, and they haven't been able to replace Von Miller. Maybe they go back to that well, although they're struggling so much. They got to figure some things out before they're really at that point where they can say we're trying to win this thing right now. But you know what? They always are trying to win this thing right now. So maybe they would. Certainly there's some other teams out there like that. I mean, I think it'd be hard to get a team to give up a first round pick right now for Roquan. And, if you're the Bears, what this is really going to come down to is if, assuming Roquan stays and he's here in the offseason, is he willing to budge on that number that he had back in August? Because if not, you're going to be looking at the franchise tag.
Rick asking here, Poles has brought in Pettis, St. Brown, Pringle, Valus. Valus was actually a draft pick, remember, not a free agent signing. Smith Mar said, "Is this the worst free agent wide receiver signings of all time?" It's not good, John.
It's not good. And I look at that list right there, and the other thing that pops out is they didn't give up. They didn't commit a whole lot of money to any of these guys.
Yeah,
and so. While there was reason to believe that maybe Byron Pringle could have a better season where in a place where he's not the number 4 target, maybe St. Brown can figure things out somewhere where he's not buried on the depth chart. I think we've seen that that's not really the case, and it's not happening. Certainly not the way that maybe the Bears had hoped. And the good thing is that you're not really committed to a lot of these guys long term.
Well, that's a good point, but that's what irritated me in the offseason, and it continues to irritate me now as we see this unfold, because there were younger names that you were able to get in free agency on short-term deals that I felt had much higher upside than the guys that the Bears ended up signing. Devontae Parker ended up in New England. DJ Chark ended up in Detroit, and neither of those guys, Devontae Parker had a pretty good game a couple weeks ago, but like neither of those guys have had like these huge starts of the season where you're like, oh, the Bears really missed out. But just there was higher upside with guys like that signed short-term deals that are still in their mid to, I believe, like 25, 26. I got to look offhand. That Chark are young enough.
I'm looking at Chark right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I believe Parker's 27 offhand. Maybe it's a little older. Sean, if you could check on that while I'm rambling here. But I mean, there were names that I felt gave you much higher upside that still didn't.
Devontae Parker's 29.
29. Okay. A little older, but I do think that it's still in a range where there was enough upside that it was worth a shot. And I just felt like the Bears cheaped out in that realm, and they did not take a path that maximized the upside in the short term for Justin Fields.
No, I think that's what we talked about all off season, and that's very, very clear and very apparent at this point in the season. You're sitting at 2-4, and you're struggling, and they don't really have answers. They don't really have weapons. I think the good thing is that they have a little break here where they can sort of reevaluate what they're doing. It's not a bye week, but you got a Monday game following a Thursday. That's a pretty long break. And,
Another primetime game. Oh,
Yeah,
no.
another primetime game coming up against the Patriots. That sounds like it's going to be another ugly nationally televised game for the Bears. But you know what? Maybe they can reevaluate. Take this time, reevaluate what you're doing, and make some tweaks. Whether that's on the O line, whether that's on the way you're attacking teams in the passing game, they have a chance here to sort of look at this with fresh eyes.
Is Pringle on the 4-week IR,
Yeah,
Sean?
he's
Yeah.
he's a 4 week guy.
Okay.
So um, he's out at least 4 weeks. We'll have to see. I think this was his second week out. I have to double check that, but yeah, he would be eligible to come back in a couple of weeks.
Mark, would you trade? Mark says, would you trade Roquan straight up for DJ Moore? I would not do that, and I don't think I don't think either team would do that, Sean.
I don't know that really solves it solves one problem, but then it creates another.
Yeah,
And that's the issue.
well, like it would help with obviously. I understand on the surface why you would ask that question, Mark, and like the Bears, if they're not going to want to sign Roquan long term, yeah, you get DJ Moore, a potential upside receiver under a long term contract, but Carolina isn't going to make that trade. Like they're not trading a wide receiver like DJ Moore to then go out and pay a linebacker like Roquan Smith. That just doesn't really make long term sense for Carolina, because then they're just opening up themselves where they need more help at wide receiver.
They're going to be looking for draft picks.
Yeah, they're going to want a draft pick there, Mark. He had also asked, what could you get by trading Quinn? What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, well, the first place my head goes is what was that Von Miller trade? Now I'm forgetting, Kyle. Do you remember what that was? I'm not saying that I'm not going that's exactly what you're going to get, but what as a baseline, where was that?
I want to say it was a second rounder, but I'm pulling it up now. Von Miller trade to Rams.
I mean, you're not going to get the same value
second and third round picks
when you're talking about a guy who has one sack this season in 6 games.
Yeah.
So automatically you got to take that down a notch from what Von Miller got. But I think from the Bears' perspective, if the guy's not giving you sacks, if the guy's got a huge contract that you don't really want to use the last couple of years of, why not take whatever you can get? Why not take a 4th round pick and just move on?
Yeah, like so his stock probably doesn't fluctuate as much as Roquan Smith because of the age difference and because of, I mean, we got a long enough track record with Robert Quinn where teams probably are willing to take a chance a little bit more, where they say, hey, if we bring him in and give more talent around him, he's going to start to produce more. Now it does hurt a little bit, as Sean said, with the lack of productivity this year. And it's not just, you go back, obviously an incredible year last year, but going back to that 2020 season where he had a really, really rough first year in Chicago, that kind of hurts a bit. If you could get like a 3rd and a 6th, 3rd and a 7th, or just a straight up 4th round pick, you'd probably take that if you're the Bears.
I would think that they would, because if he's not producing, he's really not providing a whole lot for you. And if you're Ryan Poles, like we keep pounding this, but you're not really trying to win right now. That much is clear. Why not take whatever draft capital you can get for one of the few remaining veterans who's maybe worth any draft capital?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all right, we're past here 30 minutes and starting to kind of getting low on questions here. So if you have anything else, throw it into the chat. We'll try and get to it before we wrap up here. Let's see, Rick pops in here now. If you could go back to the draft, would you still draft Brisker and Gordon, or would you have went wide receiver with one of those picks? I hate doing revision history, but it's also kind of hitting me right there because I was pretty adamant at the time that while I liked both of the players that the Bears took, I was not particularly pleased with the lack of talent being installed around Justin Fields. Sean, what do you think?
I'm just going to read a couple of the receivers that went after Kyler Gordon at 39. Wan'Dale Robinson to the Giants, John Mechie to Houston, Tyquan Thornton to the Patriots, George Pickens to the Steelers, Alec Pierce to the Colts, Sky Moore to the Chiefs. I mean, all those guys are on the table. And now that's not necessarily going to change your season. That's not like, there's no Jamar Chase in that list, but you're going to give yourself another weapon, and you're going to give somebody who can take some time to get on the same page as Justin Fields. And, that was a hope that you would have for Velus Jones, but he hasn't been out there on offense. He hasn't provided anything from the wide receiver position outside of a couple of jet sweeps.
Well, and this is a transformation we've seen in the NFL over the last, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, where it used to be, it wasn't nearly as severe as the tight end position, but wide receivers, for the most part, rookie wide receivers didn't make a huge impact in the NFL. You'd get maybe 1 or 2 a year, and then you get a secondary group of guys that looked nice, that you felt high upside still in the future, but it took a little bit more time. You're seeing more and more teams utilize these young wide receivers, throw them into the offense, even if it's only they're out there for, they start out maybe 30% of snaps, 40%. By this time of year, you're seeing them out there 60, 70, sometimes even 80% of snaps. And then the really elite ones, like I said, are pretty much playing full time. But the Bears, by spending 2 picks on defensive players in their secondary, really limited the offensive upside that you were going to get out of guys in that second round. There were some good wide receivers that you mentioned, guys that I really liked, both on the outside and potential slot receivers. And some of those names have had bigger impacts early this season than others. But a lot of those are names that I still like. I liked Wan'Dale Robinson. I liked Sky Moore. George Pickens has had nice moments so far. I feel bad for John Mechie, but I still like him, hoping that he can get back and make an impact next year for Houston. But yeah, I mean, there were guys at the wide receiver position that I really liked at day 2 that the Bears, for whatever reason, felt the need to go secondary route. Now, I don't know if that's simply because they felt higher upside for guys like Jaquan Brisker. I don't know if Matt Eberflus said, hey, as a defensive-minded coach, I want to start by rebuilding this club on the defensive side. We're never going to really have an explanation there. But yeah, the Bears missed out on some potential upside at the wide receiver position.
That being said, I think that's got to be a focus next year during the draft. I mean, pretty high. I mean, first, second, third round, you got to be looking at a receiver. You look at where a lot of these, realistically, if you're going to have a breakout star at wide receiver, it's probably somebody you're drafting. You look at the guys like Jamar Chase, you look at Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown has had a really nice second year so far for the Lions. And those are all guys that they drafted. It's hard to address that position unless you're trading away your house for Tyreek Hill. It's hard to address that position without committing a lot of your assets towards it.
Mark now asking, are there any number 1 wide receivers available in free agency next year? I'm trying to pull that up, Mark. I'm not going to lie. I have not even started to look ahead at free agent names. I got pulled up just looking at Spot Track here. I'm not seeing any names right offhand that are particularly interesting. I'm seeing a lot of veterans that aren't exactly, certainly not number 1 wide receiver type guys. I mean, there are some names in here that I think can help here as I pull, like a guy like Marvin Jones, Sterling Shepard. DJ Chark will be back on the market. Julio Jones is at this age, not looking great. Juju will be back on the market. There's not a lot of what I would consider number 1 receivers. Mike Thomas. No, I'm sorry. That's the wrong Mike Thomas. That's the Cincinnati Mike Thomas. I had to double check that after I said that. So I don't see a lot of names there. And the other thing, Mark, I could very well be overlooking a name, but a lot of times those big name guys aren't making it to free agency at the wide receiver position.
Well,
anyway.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams were your big name guys for next year. And they obviously both got traded and signed big deals. And I'm scrolling through NFL.com's top 25 free agents for next year. There's not a single receiver in the top 25. You have to get down to Jacoby Myers, who is mentioned in the after the top 25 as sort of the next group. So yeah, I mean, there's not really a good answer, if you're looking in free agency at this point, at least as it stands right now. And that's why the draft is so important. And certainly maybe somebody is going to be available in a trade that we're not thinking of at this point. But if you're Ryan Poles, you better be taking a hard look at those receivers at the college level right now.
Yeah, definitely. Because if the Bears do end up picking in the top 10 and possibly the top five, like, I mean, very well could end up being that way. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This is one of the worst rosters in the NFL. Being able to pull off that win in week one against San Francisco already kind of sets you back a little bit when we're talking about draft position. But now you're at 2-4. You just lost to a Washington team that's going to be
I mean,
another
that
team.
was your chance to pick up a win, right?
Yeah, I mean, you lost to a Washington team that is also going to be in contention for one of those top five picks. You did beat Houston, who's also going to be up there. But yeah, the Bears are going to need to find a top tier wide receiver, and we've seen now teams are taking guys in the top 10 of the wide receivers, and they're making impact. The Bears need to be able to do that next year, I think, though.
Yeah, if next year's draft is anything like last year's with the craziness with the trades and all of that shuffling to get wide receivers, the Bears need to be involved in that because you need to give Justin Fields another weapon.
Rick says, through 6 weeks, what grade would you give Eberflus? And I want to expand that a little bit. I want to say, how about what grade would you give the coaching staff, Sean?
Yeah. I mean, a C. I don't know. I'm not ready to say that like they're terrible. I'm not there yet. I'm willing to give them time, but certainly I haven't seen anything that really makes me say, yeah, this is an A+ effort. They're learning along the way too. I think Luke Getsy is learning as a play caller. This is his first time doing that, and they've had good moments and bad. I think I would like to see them keep throwing the football with Justin Fields, but I also can't blame them for running it so heavily those first few weeks when that's how you're giving yourself a chance to win games. So I'm never going to blame them for trying to win the football game.
Yeah, I'd say probably a C is fair, maybe a C+. I think the team has done pretty well in terms of executing its game plans, in terms of what talent they have to execute the game plans they've put in. It's been my bigger concern with the Bears has probably been, or at least the coaching staff, has been the situational football. There have been some times, some play calls that just have not made a lot of sense. I expect that to get better. I mean, this is Matt Eberflus's obviously first head coaching job. As Sean mentioned, it's Luke Getsy's first time as an offensive coordinator. There have been some questions or there have been some times where I've definitely scratched my head. And this is where I think it makes it feel a little bit worse, at least from my perspective. And it depends on who you wanted as head coach a little bit here, because I was a huge proponent of Brian Dable. And I really like what he's done in New York. I mean, that Giants team has plenty of deficiencies on it. But the Giants are getting the most out of the talent that they have. I'm not sure I can say that about the Bears coaching staff so far. Now, I think they have less talent. They have some of the least talent in the NFL to work with, but I don't quite think they've maximized what they have so far.
Yeah, look at the way that they were able to scheme up Daniel Jones to run against the Bears in that game a couple of weeks ago. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't do something similar with Justin Fields. Obviously, Saquon Barkley is a better back than anything the Bears have at this point. But the real the out to that point, Kyle, is that we don't really know if Brian Dable was really available because they're hiring a GM who's just coming from Buffalo. It seems pretty obvious that those guys want to work together. But it's fair to ask that question. Were the Bears serious about him, and if not, why was that?
Yeah, I don't want to sound overly dramatic about it because we're 6 weeks in. We don't know how this is going to turn out. But like I said, I was a huge Brian Dable proponent. I love the offense that they ran in Buffalo. The progression you saw out of that offense, the progression you saw out of Josh Allen was really positive, and to see it really carry over immediately with the offense in New York. Kind of just reinforces the fact that I felt really confident in Brian Dable. And I think it's compounded by the fact that you've seen the Bears make the wrong choice when making coaching hires before, when I felt like it was kind of obvious. But like I said, it's only been 6 weeks. I don't want to jump to too many conclusions.
At least Bears fans can say that their head coach isn't making the type of
Yeah, it's not Nathaniel
It's not
Hackett.
Nathaniel Hackett. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. It's not Nathaniel Hackett level of mismanagement as far as timeouts and game situational stuff. So they got that going for him.
And I don't want to sound like I'm just the smartest guy in the world too, because like I've been a big Brandon Staley a guy out with the LA Chargers, and I'm really starting to doubt that he's ever going to get it. Um, so I don't want to sound like I'm always correct on these coaches thing. I'm certainly wrong more than I'm right. It just I had a really strong feeling on Brian Dable. Mark asking, would you sign David Montgomery to a contract extension? That's an interesting question, Sean.
Sure, but I'm not gonna give him like a boatload of money. I don't know. I mean, I don't know about you, Kyle, but I'm starting to want. We're 6 weeks in now. Um, is Khalil Herbert a more efficient runner? Because it's kind of starting to look that way
I don't know
to
if
my
it's
eyes,
that.
anyway.
My and here's my thing with the contract extension for David Montgomery. I pretty much in almost any scenario in the NFL, I do not want to pay a running back anymore unless it
Yeah,
is the truly elite of the elite. Like I believe in the system of that you can replace running backs, that you should be using multiple backs. Um, Now, like again, it depends on what type of guaranteed money you're giving him, how much of your cap space in the future. Like if giving David Montgomery an extension is going to limit what you can do at edge rusher, at wide receiver, and at offensive tackle, then no. I don't think you should do that. If it's something that's not going to impact those plans at all, then yeah, you can look at it. But I definitely don't think you should make re-signing David Montgomery a priority based on where the Bears are at and the positions that they need to add.
yeah. I mean, they have to address a lot of things here. Rick in the comments says that Herbert can't pass block, and yeah, that's the issue with Khalil Herbert is he's not as good a pass blocker as Montgomery. But that's why you got two of these guys. They have a little bit different skill sets. Yeah, you look at some of these. You look at the way the Bills are built or the Chiefs. They're not investing a ton of money in their running backs, and that's kind of the blueprint you want if you're trying to maximize your other positions. You can go cheap at running back and be okay.
Yeah, spend mid to late round draft picks on running backs, supplement it with kind of maybe not a journeyman type running back, but a guy that is a complementary piece. And you can work it from there. So that's the route I would take if I was an NFL franchise. Oh, again, I mean, sometimes you wander into a guy that is worth paying, but it's so rare in the NFL. The wheels fall off so quickly on these running backs. I mean, you're seeing that a bit with Christian McCaffrey. I mean, the injuries the last couple of years have really took away from the shine of Christian McCaffrey. You know what? We're gonna go ahead here as we take towards the 50-minute mark. Want to get out of here so Sean can get up to Hallis Hall for the post mortem there. But Rick really with the right comment here to end this on. Best thing last night was Hub's son Arthur saying that Hub has made it home. Get well, Hub. We need you back. Yeah. It's been incredible to see the progress for Hub over the last month. It's makes me feel it's been really nice to see.
Yeah, definitely. We're all hoping Hub can get back, and that's great news that he's back home because it's been a long journey, been a couple of months now. So we're happy to see that Hub is home and getting better.
I believe Arthur also tweeted last night that Hub made a comment about the Bears offense almost sending him back to the hospital. So, uh, yeah, that's not going to be the last time that Hub has that reaction. We're looking forward to talking with Hub and visiting him soon. We'll try and pass along an update, any thoughts from Hub when we get a chance to. But yeah, let's go ahead and get out of here, Sean. Thank you everyone who joined us again. Make sure you hit the thumbs up and subscribe to Shaw Locals YouTube page. It helps once again helps people find the show. We're looking forward. We'll be back with you next week, next Monday, to talk some more Bears, start getting you set for week 7. For now, though, we're going to log off. For Sean Hammond, I am Kyle Nabors. Everyone enjoy a nice weekend of football with no Bears to watch. We'll talk with you again on Monday. Thanks, everyone.